Hey everyone, welcome back to D&J's Epic Quest. I am Justorian, and this is
Dereker. Hello.
How you doing, man?
Good. In the closet again, which is fine, but it's just hot as shit. We did get stormed on a little bit ago for a few minutes, so it cooled off a little bit outside, but didn't do much for inside.
Yeah, it's been hot as hell. Our AC doesn't work quite well because it's old as dirt, so we're in the process of trying to figure out how to get that fixed.
I can speak to that a little bit. So our house was built in 1996, and I'm pretty sure that we have the original air conditioning unit and furnace. Actually, I know the furnace is still the original one. I would be pretty confident in saying the AC unit is also. And last year-ish, about this time, maybe a month or two ago, this time last year, we got a quote to get our furnace and AC replaced. And so lady came out and she looked at our AC unit and she's like, these aren't even like this, the size of it. Like, it's not even legal to sell them that small anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I guess. So it's a little underpowered for our house, I think. I mean, our bedroom is the hottest room in the summer and the coldest room in the winter. So we didn't get that done because other stuff came up, and it would have been like, it was like $11,000 or something like that. So
yeah, that's kind of the ballpark that I had. I kind of wanted to do the AC first, and then the hot or the furnace, because we have a boiler. It's a boiler here.
It's interesting.
The water heater is not. It's not meant for 5 people who shower every day, and on top of heating a whole house or a townhome. So it's not very efficient, and I can definitely tell based on a lot of my bills. So
yeah, good times.
So, yeah, we'll figure it out though.
You always do.
Yes. But yeah, I suppose we should get started, eh?
Yeah, we should get started. This chapter, while not very long, was a bastard. I liked this chapter, and I also really did not like it.
You didn't like it for the feels, huh?
Well, I mean, I guess I kind of called it, but it's still like, man, it's kind of sucked to read it.
I can only imagine. I mean, you had that part to summarize too. Like, I can only imagine how much more you picked out while summarizing it too. So it's definitely a heavy hitter for sure. One that I would imagine as we go through this journey, a moment that sticks with you for maybe the rest of your life, depending on how invested you are in the series. But yeah, it hit hard.
I would say that it might be, thus far through these 2 books, it's probably the most memorable moment, I think. Just because it kind of feels like the biggest moment to me. If that makes sense.
I could see that. I would definitely agree. I would agree with you on that. It's definitely, while there are other things that are just as memorable, I think that with all of the variables that are added on to this, just take it that extra step above.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Well, as always here, we'll shout out to Silverstone's books again. Check out their websites. Check out their books. I know they're always getting new books in. I seen that they got some signed copies of some sci-fi book come in. I can't remember what it was called, Down Below or something like that. I don't know anything about it, but they're hyping it up pretty big, so it must be a pretty big deal for the bookshop. And then just remember that code for 10% off your next order is still active, and that is DJ Quest. So check them out. Help us support them, supporting indie authors.
Yes, absolutely. Also, the Silverstone's books should be live at this point in time by the time you listen to this episode. So go back, and if you haven't already, take a listen as we get to know Cavan, the owner and operator of Silverstone's books.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to talk to him, and he was a really nice guy.
Yeah, very nice guy. I enjoyed our conversations.
For sure.
But yeah, on to our patrons in order of subscription here. We've got Jan, the Picker of Pies, Luciana and Trigan, Ryan the Topological, Damien the Rock of Faces, Nate Fiddle Me This, Shield Anvil Dillon, and Quartermaster Sergeant Lieutenant Parker. So thank you again for your contributions. We appreciate you following our quest here.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We appreciate you all and definitely appreciate your generosity here towards us.
Awesome. Well, with a heavy heart, we'll get started on chapter 21 from Deadhouse Gates.
You want to? I was just going to ask if you want to take this epigraph.
Yeah,
you
sure.
You want to take it? Go ahead and take it.
I could totally do it. Epigraph for chapter 21 here. Every throne is an arrow butt.
I wanted to hear you say the word butt.
Oh, really? Okay. I can say it anytime you would like.
I wanted to surprise you. Oh, there you go.
All right. So, section 1 here. Beneath the Whirlwind's towering spire was another billowing of dust as the massive army decamped. The air was lit gold on all sides, as if the desert had at last unveiled its memories. Shaik stood on a flat wooden watchtower overlooking the large space next to the palace. The efforts of an entire city beneath her, unnoticed, as she set her gaze on the south. The young girl Shaik had adopted kneeled close by. Hebrick climbed the ladder and opened the trapdoor. He placed an invisible hand on the young girl's head before turning his gaze to Shaik. Haborik states to her that Lorik is the one to watch, as the other two think they are subtle, but are not really that subtle. Returning her gaze to the south, she asked Haborik what he thought of Lorik. Haborik states that she has more knowledge than he would possess. Shaik tells him, regardless of that, what did the ex-priest think? Haborik tells her that he thinks that Lorik senses the bargain. Shaik questioned what he meant by this. Haborik moved to stand beside her, his wrists resting on the railing. He responded by saying the bargain that the goddess made with Malazan, the one that proves that rebirth did not happen. Shaik interrupts and asks if it had not. Haborik boldly says no, and that no child chose to be born, and has no say in that matter, but you had both. Shaik is not reborn, but has been remade. All Shaik could say is that Lorik then risks the wrath of the goddess. Haborik agrees, but says that this is more the reason to keep an eye on him. They both sat in silence for a moment, both staring at an impenetrable shroud to the south. Haborik clears his throat and asks if maybe her new gifts could answer some questions. Shaik responds by saying, such as? Haborik then asks why Drajana chose her and when did the manipulation begin? Was it in Raraku or Skullcap or some distant continent? When did the goddess first cast her gaze on Malazan? Shaik admits that Drajana never did. Haborik starts to speak, but Shaik interrupts to say that it was unlikely, but she chose her own path, and it was her journey alone. Even the goddess could not foresee unexpected deaths, twists of mortality, and decisions made. Shaik Elder had the gift of prophecy. She continues on to explain that even Drajana was disturbed by Elder Shaik's visions that made no sense, a hint of peril, but no certainty. Strategies and tactics are discouraged by the apocalypse. Haborik grimaced and said that this doesn't bode well. Shaik said that this was wrong, and they are free to devise their own will. Haborik states that even if the goddess did not guide Malazan, someone or something did. Otherwise, she would never have been given those visions. Shaik said that he now spoke of fate, and he should discuss that with his fellow scholars, as not every mystery can be unraveled. She apologized if this pains the ex-priest. Haborik says, not as half as sorry as I am, because it occurred to him that even mortals are but pieces on a game board. So too are the gods. She smiled and said that elemental forces were in opposition. Haborik scowled and said that this was a familiar quote. Shaik explained that it should be, as it's carved into the imperial gate in Unta. Kellenved's own words as a means to justify the balance of destruction with creation, the explanation for the Malazan Empire. Haborik is heard saying Hood's breath. Shaik asks if she's sent his head spinning in different directions. Haborik agrees. She tells Haborik to save his breath. The subject of his next treatise, no doubt that a handful of old fools will dance in excitement. Haborik questions this. Shaik elaborates on his fellow scholars and his readers. They were silent once more. At some point, Haborik asked her what she would do. Shaik asked what's happening out there. Haborik corrects her and says that what's still happening out there. Corbolo Dom's senseless killing in her name. Shaik corrects Haborik and explains that he kills in the name of the goddess. Her voice was brittle with anger, as she had already had this conversation with Leoman. Haborik assumes that the word of her rebirth has reached Dom. Interrupting him, Shaik said that it hadn't, and she had sealed Rariku. The storm around them could scour flesh from bones. Not even the Talani mass would survive. Haborik questions her as she has made the announcement by raising the Whirlwind. She explains, which has raised doubts and fear in Dom, as he's very eager to complete the task he's chosen. He's unrestrained and free to continue his obsessions. Haborik then asks what she will do again. Yes, they could march, but it would take months to travel to reach the Aran Plain. By then, Dom would give Tavor all justification to deliver ruthless punishment. Shaik states that he assumes that Tavor is her superior in tactics. The ex-priest begins to explain that there is importance to how far her sister would go in cruelty. Take, for example, Tavor seeing her sister standing here. Shaik tells Haborik that this is where her advantage lies, though. Tavor believes she is to face a desert witch that she has never met. Tavor is ignorant of her enemy, but Shaik is not ignorant of her enemy. A subtle change had come from the distant roar of the whirlwind behind them. Shaik smiled. Haborik moments later became aware of that change. He turned to her and asked her what was happening. Shaik said that it would not take months to reach the Aran Plain. Has the ex-priest not wondered what the whirlwind is? Haborik's blind eyes widened as he said that it was becoming unbalanced and falling slowly. Shaik said that this was Dryjana's warren, their whirling road to the south. Haborik asked if it would take them there in time to stop Dom's madness. She did not answer, as it was too late. Pretty interesting section, right?
It was. My heart dropped a little bit when I read it the first time. I will not lie.
Yeah, why is that?
Where it's talking about this bargain and, oh, you haven't been reborn. And she's like, well, haven't I? And he says, no, you've been remade. So that's kind of, I guess, it feels a little bit like semantics, but
it does
like, oh,
feel
no.
like semantics. It really does. And all this does is make me doubt about aligning with fellows in being the Shaik Reborn and kind of go back to my previous stance about it. I mean, I guess being remade is a possibility. Again, going back to your semantic comment, I don't know if that technically counts, but I'll still take a pie because I have no way to argue it. You know what I mean? Like remade, reborn.
Potato.
Right. So, but also on top of that, this bargain thing to me it felt like it came out of nowhere, like out of left field. For Lorik to think that Dryjana made a deal with Felazin, I wonder if we'll get more insight as to like that mindset or where that came about or how that came about, or if is Lorik just blowing smoke for the sake of blowing smoke? And
I think
also,
you meant Shaik and not Dryjana.
No, that Dryjana made a deal with Felazin. Shaik is like, I guess the way I've had it in my headcanon this whole time, she's like the spokeswoman for Dryjana. Like essentially a like Haborik used to be a priest of Fenner. I almost kind of get the feeling that Shaik is like a priest of Dryjana.
Okay.
Or like how Poost would be to Shadow Throne.
I guess I haven't felt that, like, I guess maybe now I'm changing how I was thinking like from before, because I thought like the Dryjana was more like a state of mind, kind of like how you talked about before with
That
the
was the
Whirlwind.
apocalypse and the whirlwind.
I guess I haven't really thought of Dryjana as a being, I guess.
Oh, gotcha. I just always
That's
assumed
right.
it was that she's a goddess.
Okay.
I mean, I guess I could be wrong, but I guess that's how I had it envisioned in my mind. But I mean, Lorik has detected some type of bargain, or maybe he's full of shit. But also, how does Haborik know that? Are they having conversations with each other? Like, what brought this on? I guess is my main question.
I don't know. All I can keep thinking is that Heberick and Lorik should start like a band together.
What would this band be called?
I don't even know. Look, Mom, no hands.
oh,
I don't know.
oh, gross. Mm,
Well, you didn't have to make it dirty.
yeah, I mean, hey, in this world, people are still people. There's nothing
Good point.
extraordinary about them. They all make terrible decisions. They all make good decisions. No one is yet to be cast out as bad or evil or good or bad,
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, we have our feelings, but yeah,
Right.
I guess you're right.
One of the other things that I picked out in the section was when they're talking about Shaik, or when Shaik is talking about Shaik Elder, and that she had the gift of prophecy. Shaik says that even with this gift, it is no more than a seed, and it grows in the freedom of the human soul. And I resonated with this line as it insinuates that Elder Shaik's visions are young. And with being young comes a lack of experience and a lack of knowledge, and that what she predicted may or may not be fruitful is kind of my guess.
Cool.
She's not really helping your case at all with this whole reborn thing, because she's playing it off as if the prophecy is null and void. Seeing her death was null and void. It almost kind of makes me feel like even though she saw her death, it very well could have been avoided, but she just like willingly accepted it,
You just got to, like I said before, you got to trust the process.
Right. Right.
Have faith.
Have faith. So another thing though is that throughout the story, Felizina's character, because of the trauma that she's gone through, I guess, I don't know if you would agree, has been kind of a colder character to the cast that supports her, right?
For sure.
So I almost get the sense now that it's like cold wisdom emanating from her. And it's crazy how much it makes sense. But at the same time, I see and hear Haborik's concerns as well. And it's like he doubts, but from what info does he have that is leading him to like question her? Or is this just the way it's going to be at first for Haborik and Shaik's relationship? Like, Shaik seems so confident in herself that she is reborn. And maybe it's one of those things where like slowly at first, Haborik is going to have his doubts, but then we'll eventually realize that she is. I don't know, because I'm conflicted again. Whereas before I was super confident that she wasn't going to be Shaik reborn. And then we had that chapter with the three mages, and I was confident that she was reborn, totally willing to take a pie. And now this fucking section happens. And I'm just, everything in here is just littered with small, gooey pieces of information that contradict or align with the way that I previously felt about Shaik.
I guess I don't understand why you're conflicted. I mean, do you doubt that Felison / Shaik possesses powers right now?
Yes, but we'll get to that.
What?
I haven't talked about that yet. Okay, all right.
So we got to talk about this now.
Okay, fine. Well, let me make this next point, and then we'll swing back to that.
All right.
You know how Haboric is talking about like pieces on a game board, and so are the gods. Do you
Yep.
remember that? So I find that interesting. And is it possible that Dryjana is nothing but a piece on a game board, operated by a different god's influence, forced to give Felazin her elder Shaik's vision and powers?
I feel like you're digging pretty deep here.
But also, I feel like when Shaik is talking about Kellanved's saying on the Imperial Gates of Unta, that she's aligning with what Haboric said about the pieces on a game board as the premise of Dryjana potentially being instructed to choose Felazin because she's the younger sister of the adjunct of the Empire. I would imagine this would be a god or goddess that would align with the apocalypse cause, being that she quoted Kellanved. Would this god influencing Dryjana be the god of Shadowthrone? See, right? Like, is it possible because Kellanved, Amanus, right, wants to get back at Lucene, that what better person to lead the apocalypse than the younger sister of the adjunct? Do you see how that could be pieces on a game board?
Sure. I mean, but it's possible I could walk through a wall too. It's just not very likely, right?
You don't think it's likely? You don't think other gods are intervening here?
No, I'm not saying that. It's possible, but I feel like Felasin's powers, Shaik's powers, whatever you want to call her, are through Shaik. I don't think they're some third party thing, funneled in from somewhere else.
I don't think Amanus is giving her powers. I mean, potentially, but is it possible that Dryjana and Amanus have some type of deal or bargain, right? Like Boost keeps talking about all through their travels in Tremolor. Maybe, again, there's another twist here where we want to think that the bargain has to do with the Azath and Icarium, when really the bargain is Dryjana and giving her Felazins, or giving Shaik's visions to Felazin. I mean, like I said, this section opened up so many other things for me now, and all it's doing is making me think about other possibilities that I had never considered before, especially with what Hebrick is saying about the gods and the game board, and gods are pieces on a game board as well as mortals.
Well, I will agree. There's definitely other players. I mean, because we still have 8 books to go, right? I mean, for the main series here, gods, mortals, whatever. There's definitely other players, but like my point was, I mean, Felasin, Shaik has these powers, like some sort of abilities, right? Like, I don't know how you could deny that.
No, I don't. Absolutely. I 100% agree that she does. However,
okay. I thought we were disagreeing on that at first. I'm like, okay, wait, we got to talk about this.
No.
Okay.
My thing now is that, yes, she has these powers, but how much of that is influenced? Is this genuine Dryjana prophecy coming or being reborn? Or is this other gods in cahoots with Dryjana to serve their own needs?
Maybe. I mean, I'm sure that's something that we'll see down the line here, as things throughout the series play out, who's working with who and how and where, when.
But still enough to give me a pie in the face, even if it wasn't a legit prophecy and it was like let's say, I don't know, I don't even know, like in the 6th book or wherever we find out that it was all manipulated and Dryjana was forced to do it. Did I get a pie in the face for nothing?
I don't know. I guess maybe we'd have to leave that up to our listeners to decide.
All right, fair enough. I really liked the section because of all of the ways that it makes you think, and in reality, from a like a story perspective, not a lot is happening, right? It's literally just Haborik and Shaik standing on a watchtower, with the whirlwind swirling all around them. And down below is the Apocalypse Army just decamping, like almost getting ready to move. So,
Right.
But I guess the devil's in the details here. And that's what I'm picking up right now is those devilish details.
And you picked out a lot of them for sure.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that I thought was interesting was the fact that like Shaik shuts down Haborik as like after she says that if she had his head spinning in different directions after all of the conversations that they had about the game pieces and Kellenved's message on the Imperial Warren or the Imperial Gate of Unta. And it got me thinking, because when she's just like, Shaik elaborates that, as far as Haborik's fellow scholars and his readers, has Haborik been documenting the events? Because that's kind of what it sounds like. And it sounds like Shaik doesn't want to hear whatever response he has to the elemental opposition conversation that her and Haborik had previously.
Do you think he's got like some sort of like crazy photographic memory or something?
Very possible. Very, very possible.
I'm almost like, he almost seems like he's a camera a little bit, doesn't he?
I think I know where you're going with this, but do you have any details?
Not really. Like, just like when you're talking about how you think he's recording things, maybe it's not so much he's writing things down, but he's
like
capturing these things as a camera would. I don't know. Wouldn't that be wild if somewhere down the line he's just like standing there and he's shooting fucking lasers out of his eyes with these images of everything that happened or something weird like that?
That would be crazy.
I don't think that's going to happen, but he'll be able to recant these things in extreme detail that nobody would be able to doubt it just with how detailed it was. I don't know.
No way for someone to discredit him, so to speak.
Right, because he's going to be like, well, you were there, and Steve was there, I don't.
Right.
It's always Steve.
It's always Steve. You're right. Cool. And then there was a part in here where, Haborik is asking about the word of her rebirth reaching Dom. And Shaik was like, no, I sealed Raraku. The storm could scour flesh from bones, and not even Talani Mass would survive. And Haborik is just like, but wait a minute. Didn't you make an announcement by raising the Whirlwind? And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the spire that Duiker saw in a couple of chapters ago, right?
That's what I thought, yeah.
Okay. So I think that was kind of cool how that tied in a little bit. Not that it really gives us any more answers to our questions, but it's nice to have that, I guess, related, so to speak, tie into other chapters and other sections.
Yeah, it was pretty cool just to like who knows how far away they were. Like, people are seeing the cell over and stuff.
Yeah. And speaking of Dom and their conversation about him, she says that he's unrestrained and free to continue his obsessions. And I feel like at this point in time, Shaik is purposefully holding her armies back at this point. And I think that this is some ominous foreshadowing to the next section, because we understand what Dom's motivations are, right? Coltane was picked to lead the Malazan army over Dom, right? And I think Shaik is intentionally allowing his fuel of obsession to continue.
Sure. Not something I picked up on, but not something I would disagree with either.
Yeah, it's very calculated at this point. But my question, sub question is, how is she knowing all of this is going on? Is Chemist Reloe somehow speaking to her or the other high mages about the events that are transpiring in the South? Like, how is she getting word of all this?
I would think that Shaik Elder within her is somehow aware of all of this and feeding her tidbits of information or whatever she needs to know, would be my feeling.
Shaik died.
But she still has her within her. Again, like I feel like it's like the wax witch a little bit from Gardens of the Moon. Like there's a little bit of her inside of her.
Gotcha. I see what you're saying. All right. I mean, I can understand that because that already happened in this universe, so I won't argue it. So
there's precedent now.
Yeah, exactly. Now you have evidence where I don't have shit. Fair enough.
Hey, well, you picked it up the first time with like no evidence, so hey, that was all you, man.
I suppose I set myself up for failure. Damn you, past Justin. Another thing that I thought was just like what I would say is a mic drop moment is just holy shit. The line where she's basically saying that Tavor is ignorant of her enemy because Tavor is expecting to face somebody that she doesn't know. But Fellowsen, on the other hand, is not ignorant of her enemy because she knows her sister is coming. Well, not coming, but, she knows her sister, and she knows that in the event that they do ever face to face, Tavor is not going to be facing some wax witch or some desert witch that she hasn't met before. And so therefore will catch her off guard because it's her younger sister that is waiting for her wherever that happens. So I think your theory is coming true. And that there's probably going to be some type of showdown between the sisters.
I don't think we're going to get it in this book.
Oh, for sure not. No. I feel like they're setting up for all of that to happen. I would imagine House of Chains is probably going to be where we get all of this. If Gardens and Memories of Ice are on the same continent, I would assume that Deadhouse Gates and House of Chains are on the same story.
I'm sure it's only going to expand.
Well, right, because they got a whole book to do it, right?
We're close to starting the next one here, so
yeah.
Who the hell knows where we're going to go?
I would imagine by the middle of August we should start crack-a-lacking at it.
I mean, we'll probably be into it by the beginning of August.
I thought we would.
I don't know.
After
somewhere
Erickson interview.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, that's a good point. We could do a couple curse episodes in there, I suppose.
For sure. Yeah. The other thing that caught me unaware was Dryjana's Warren is the Whirlwind. I didn't see that at all.
Me neither.
Clearly it seems that Dryjana in some way, shape, or form has been influencing things, particularly within the desert, and I would imagine keeping the D'Ivers and Soul Taken away from this oasis, right?
Just flinging them away in a tornado if they get too close.
Probably, yeah. Any way your imagination can take that, sure. The last thing that I had about this really cool section is that at the very end, she wasn't able to answer her Boric because it was too late, is how the section left off. And I'm assuming that this means that the Whirlwind Warren picked them up and her army, and they are traveling to the Aran Plain, is what I imagined.
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this. You think they're going to just have this showdown at Aran?
I think that Shaik and her army and Haboric are going to show up and just watch. I think they're just going to kind of be a bystander of sorts.
To what happens in my section?
They'll join forces, maybe. I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. So who knows? Maybe the fourth book is all about the fall of Aran and the battle to keep it controlled by Malazans or the apocalypse,
Yeah, I don't know.
But that was all I had for that very beautiful section, that very insightful section. I really enjoyed that it wasn't so action packed and that it was conversational with a lot of really gummy stuff in there.
You certainly pulled a lot out of it, and it was fun to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's weird only having one section each. That was my last section, my first and last section. So
I will follow suit.
yeah. Well, I guess if you don't have any other final thoughts, I guess we'll take it away.
All right, I will preface this. There's some moments in here where, as I was reading this, like there's some pretty horrific screams, and I don't know how much I'm going to try to reenact that. So I like to give things a little flair, when I'm reading dialogue, but I don't think I'm going to be screaming real hard into the microphone or anything. Yeah, this was the bastard here. As Duiker wrote, sorry, man, go ahead.
I was just going to say, yes, it is. Yes, it is.
It, got you in the feels. As Duiker rode in past the gates, gauntleted hands reached out, grasping at his horse's reins, suddenly stopping his mare. Another, smaller hand grabbed his wrist. It was Nether, and her face put ice in his veins. "To the tower, quickly!" she pleaded to him. A murmur was building within the walls of Erin. Duiker got off his horse, his heart about to explode from within his chest. Nether pulled him through the crowd and garrison guards. Other hands reached out, touching him, reaching for him as if seeking a blessing, then falling away like a butterfly on the wind. As he climbed the tower steps, he could hear the sound of the murmur building into a roar, a wordless cry of outrage, anguish, and horror. As he approached the roof, they could hear a voice traveling down. "There's too many! I can do nothing! No! The gods forgive me! Too many! Too many!" Nether emerged first, and Duiker followed. They saw 3 figures at the outer wall. Duiker recognized the man on the left as Malik Rel. The last he had seen of him was in Hisar. The man next to him was likely Pormqual, in his fancy clothes, twitching all over nervously. To his right was a commander, looking ready to burst as he was squeezing himself so much. Near the hatch was Nil, a complete mess. Nether went to him, and they hugged so hard it seemed they would never let go of one another. The soldiers that lined the walls on either side were now adding their voices to the mobs. It was a sound that cut silence like Hood's own scythe. Duiker moved to stand next to the commander on the wall. He could hardly breathe as his gaze followed the others. A panic took hold of him as he saw the closest burial mound. It was Coltane. A dying force of roughly 400 soldiers fought on. 3 battle standards still in the air. The Sevenths, the Foolish Dogs, and the Crow all flew, defiant and proud. The outnumbered soldiers held the flags high. They were surrounded on all sides by thousands of Dom's forces. There was no discipline among them. They all thirsted for the fatal blow. Mounted troops filled the gaps between Coltane and the foot soldiers, yet they were careful enough to stay out of bow range. Dom and his guard had raised a platform from behind the mound to watch the slaughter play out. The distance, however, was not enough to grant mercy from those who watched high up on the walls. Duiker was able to pick out Coltane fighting alongside some of Mincer's sappers and a few of Lull's marines. He saw a bolt leading a retreat to the hill's summit, cattle dogs leaping in and out, protecting them like bodyguards even as they were hit with arrows, being filled like pincushions. There were no horses left, no Weasel clan left, and a handful of foolish dogs, surrounded a half dozen old men and horsewives, though they were steadily cut down. Of the Crow clan, Coltane and Bolt were all that remained. What was left of the 7th heavy armor held themselves in a ring, protecting others. Even though many had no weapons, they did not beg for mercy, they did not surrender. They died standing their ground. Duiker's fingers were bleeding from the grip on the rock, though he didn't notice. He removed his hands from the bloody stone and went to grip Pormqual. The other commander stopped him from reaching him. Pormqual screamed, "You do not understand! I cannot save them! Too many! Too many!" Duiker said, "You can, you bastard! A sortie can drive right to that mound! A cordon, damn you!" Pormqual replied, "No, we will be crushed. I must not." The commander's voice made its way to Duiker. He said, "You're right, historian, but he won't do it. The High Fist won't let us save them. For Hood's sake, we've tried. We've all tried." Malazan told him that his heart wept, but the High Fist will not change his mind. Duiker exclaimed that this was murder. He was told that Corbollo Dom would pay for it dearly. Duiker spun back to the wall. They were so close. They were dying almost within reach. No, they were dying within a soldier's reach. He thought he could not watch, but he must. The number of soldiers he saw standing now was about 100. There was a slaughter. The only battle taking place was among Dom's forces. Who would deliver the final blow? They were cut down, one after another, almost within the shadow of Aaron's high walls. And on those walls, 10,000 fellow soldiers watched the greatest crime ever committed by High Fist. Duiker could not fathom how Coltane made it this far. What he was witnessing was the end of a battle that must have been raging on for days. A battle that ensured the survival of the refugees. It now made sense why the dust cloud was so slow to approach. The last of the 7th were swallowed by the horde. Bolt stood back to back with the standard bearer, a sword in each hand. The mob closed in and drove lances through him. Even still, he fought on, cutting the leg off of a man who got too close. He was drove down and hacked to pieces. The man who held the flag left it. It was supported by corpses around it. He leapt, trying to reach his commander. For his efforts, he was decapitated. It was Corporal List. After all his mock deaths, this one was for real. The foolish dog were overrun. Scalps were soon lifted into the air. Surrounded by the last of his engineers, Coltane remained defiant, still fighting. It only took a few moments longer before the last of his guard was killed and he was swallowed, buried in the mindless frenzy. A cattle dog riddled with arrows leapt to where Coltane was. It was stabbed with a spear and lifted into the air. In its final moments, it ripped out the throat of the wielder of the spear. Duiker could not move. His only thought, Coltane. A scream rose from behind Duiker. It was Nether, though she still held nil, her head tilted back, raised to the heavens, her eyes wide. A shadow covered them. It was crows. Duiker thought about Sormo on the walls of Unta. There came 11 crows, 11, to take the great man's soul, for no creature could hold it all. 11. The sky was black with crows. Nether's wail continued to grow, the sound becoming louder and louder, as if her soul was being removed from her throat. Shocked, Duiker thought, it wasn't over. Not yet. He looked back out over the wall and saw a cross being raised with a living man on it. Nether screamed, "They'll not free him!" She was at Duiker's side, going insane, clawing her face, pulling her hair out until blood was flowing down her face. Duiker grabbed her wrists and thought she was just a child, and pulled her hands away so she would not claw out her own eyes. Chemist Reloe was on the platform next to Dom, using magic to blast crows out of the sky. Nether screaming, "No!" trying to break free from Duiker so she could launch herself from the walls. The crows regrouped and attempted to approach again. Again, Reloe killed hundreds more. Still screaming, Nether said, "Release his soul! From the flesh, release it!" The garrison commander called to his corporal, telling him to get Squint up here. Once again, the crows reformed and were cut down. The roar on the walls stopped. Now it was only silence. Nether had collapsed into his arms. Nil was curled up, either unconscious or dead. He had pissed himself, the puddle spreading out around him. The commander's aide told him he didn't think Squint had any idea of what was going on, as he had been helping the refugees. Duiker looked out to the cross, could see that Coltane was still breathing, and he knew Dom and Reloe would not let him die, not release his soul. He knew exactly what he was doing as he continued to blast crows out of the sky. They would be vessels for Coltane's soul. He could see that something was being thrown at Coltane. It took a moment for him to realize it was bits of flesh from his army. Cruelty as Duiker had never seen before. He heard the commander call Squint over. Looking out, he whispered, "Mercy." The commander said, "Well?" Squint said it was 500 paces and names the commander Blistig. Blistig says he knows the distance. Squint said it may take more than one shot. Blistig told him to get started. Squint unslung his bow and drew the string back. Another wave of crows went down. Squint said he'd aim for his chest. It was a bigger target. Blistig told him if he said another word, he'd have his tongue. The bow was as big as Squint, even when fully drawn. Duiker saw him suddenly tremble, eyes going wide as he realized who his target was. He gasped, "That's gotta be Coltane. You want me to kill Coltane?" Blistig said, "Squint." Nether reached a bloody hand out, begging for him to release him. He looked at her, tears streaming down his face. The arrow released, the shaft cutting through the air. Squint moaned, "Oh, gods, too high, too high." It rose, not touching the crows, and began its arch towards its target. Duiker would have sworn he saw Coltane look up to the sky as if to receive the gift. The point of the arrow impacted his forehead. His head snapped back as it went through. The warriors that stood on the barrow flinched back. The crows left in the sky plunged down towards his body, making eerie cries. Reloe's sorcery had been pushed aside. He thought Coltane's soul now rose to join the birds. The cloud of birds descended on him, covering his body and the cross. From his distance, it was as if flies were covering a piece of flesh. And when they rose, the leader of the Crow clan was gone. Duiker staggered to the wall, Nether slipping to the ground, her blood-matted hair covering her face as she curled around his feet. Squint moaned, "I killed him. I killed Coltane. Who took that man's life? A broken old soldier of the High Fist army? He killed Coltane. Oh, Beru, have mercy on his soul." Duiker hugged him close as the bow clattered to the ground. Blistig grabbed the man by the scruff of the neck and said, "By the end of the day, 10,000 soldiers will be voicing your name. Squint, like a hood-damned prayer." Duiker closed his eyes, and it became a day to hold his arms broken figures. He thought about who would hold him. He opened his eyes and raised his head high. He saw Pormqual's mouth moving as if in a silent plea to be forgiven. He could see shock was set in. He could see shock was set in the man's face as their eyes met. Shock and fear. Out on the killing field, Dom's forces stirred. The aftermath had started among them. Voices and cries rose out, but they were not able to break the silence and its growing power. The crows were gone. The crossed pieces of wood stood empty. Overhead, the sky had begun to die. Duiker looked back at Pormqual, who tried to cower into Malagrel's shadow. He shook his head as if to deny what had happened. Duiker thought, "Thrice denied, High Fist. Coltane is dead. They're all dead."
Fucking goosebumps, man.
That was rough.
Yeah, great work on that though. Ugh.
I don't think there's as much to pick out from this, like in your section. Yeah, a lot of emotion here. I remember reading this the first time I'm going through this, and you're like, Coltane's fighting, and then all the soldiers on the walls are, screaming, and I'm like, a part of me was like hoping, and I don't know what like good it would have done. But I'm like, okay, is Shaik, are they all showing up? Like, are they all going to come in and somehow save the day, or at least give them enough time to get to the gate and get in? And that didn't happen.
Why would Shaik help Coltane?
She wouldn't, but I don't know if it would have just caused confusion.
Gotcha. I see. Yeah. Woofda. I guess the only thoughts that I have, and I know that you touched base on this, but Pormqual, man, how it wouldn't have been that hard to just send his troops out there and at least like they would have had a fighting chance. Because it sounds like it was just what, maybe, I don't know, less than 50 people left battling this entire army. Is
Well, it
kind of
started with like what 400
yeah.
against however many thousands he has. But yeah, what a fucking knob! Like, why would you like? All you got to do is just send a bunch of people out there to like kind of create a perimeter and then just collapse back. Like, I'm not some tactician, but I think that would like work, right? Like you go out there and you create like a curved like force and push out so you can't get surrounded and then just fall back in. Some guys are probably going to die, but
you have the walls of Aaron to watch your back, so like, yeah, as you're saying, create this like crescent shape, and just allow them to come in, and then everyone else, fights them off. But I mean, maybe they would have been overran too, so
well, I don't know. I mean, you could have a bunch of those. You got all the people on the walls, just fucking light them up with arrows.
That's fair.
Like if you draw them in close, just pow, pow, pow. Fish in a barrel, man.
Do you think there's an ulterior motive with Pormqual then? I know that like we don't have a good impression of him throughout this whole book, and this is just kind of that capstone to all of those things. But it makes you wonder if there's an ulterior motive.
There's got to be, because if you're a high fist, like you're in the military, like you didn't just, well, I guess we don't know. Maybe he did kind of inherit the position or something.
Right.
Without, I would imagine most of the high fists, the fists, like you get there because of the deeds, you like earn that promotion. Like, Coltane, he became a fist. Why? Because he's not a guy you mess around with. Like, you can see his tactics prove that. And if like a high fist is above a fist, like then Pormqual should be that much more adept at tactics and fighting and commanding troops and all that type of shit. And you're just standing on top of a wall, pissing your pants, watching your guys die.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
There's got to be something going on.
I'm finding it really hard to find a justification for his actions. And maybe that's just something that hasn't been revealed yet, whether that's malicious or not. But at this moment in time, I can't find a justification for it.
Right. Well, and just like the other thing I think about too is like, well, we've seen how hard these guys fight. Like, could you imagine how much harder they would fight if they saw those doors open and like 2,000 guys come out, whatever number, like they come out, they're going to be like, fuck yeah, we're going to make it. And they're going to just go berserk. And then like they're going to cut their path. Like, I don't know. That's what goes through my mind.
Well, right. And I think the fact that they, have been essentially making their way to Aaron, and this is the reason why Duiker sees the dust cloud going so slow, like, they totally have intentions to stay alive, right? Otherwise, they would have just stayed out on the plains and not driven them towards Aaron. They would have just taken their slaughter there and not led them to the gates of Aaron. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, woofda. But just the amount of pain you get from these characters, the commander, Squint, Nil and Nether, like Nil
especially
and
Nether.
Yeah,
that hit hard.
And even Nil, like he's so like he doesn't even have a prominence in this section because he's so broken, and I'm almost questioning if he is still alive.
I think he's alive, but he's definitely a shell of himself.
Yeah, and I think. Yeah, I feel for Nil and Nether at this moment, and I kind of wonder what's going to happen afterwards with them.
Yeah, I do too. Man, there were so many like this was such a visual section, just through and through. But like one of the lines I really liked, the on the wall stood the 10,000 soldiers watching the greatest crime ever committed by a high fist. I really like that line. And yeah, it makes me wonder if Pormqual's a coward, inept, both. But I just thought it was a really good line, and then Coltane goes down and you get this dog riddled with arrows, going for one last shot, and it gets speared And it still rips out a guy's throat before it dies, and just like Jesus, I don't even know what to say.
Well, I'm assuming that dog is bent, right?
Yeah,
Also,
I mean, I would assume so too. Yeah.
Also, does this finally take care of that fucking lapdog? To throw some humor in this very dark section, brutal section.
It's probably like nipping at Corbolo Dom's heel or something. Yeah, I would think it's gone. And then, man, like List, I really liked List, and he just gets his head chopped off. At least it was quick.
Yeah. List was one of my. He was up there, but Solmar's gone, Chened's gone, Lull is gone. Like everybody that we've been reading and all of their journeys. Bolt.
I don't know if you said Bolt or not. I don't remember.
I didn't, but it's just it makes you think about all these conversations, especially Lull, that's had with the historian about humanity and like what makes a human, good or bad. It all makes those thoughts for naught, right? Like it doesn't even matter at this point in time. And I think all of that stuff just ends up building to this pivotal moment where it's I don't know. It just leaves you with goosebumps. It's like you worried and you thought about your own humanity and your own personality and the PTSD just for it to be non-existent.
Yeah. It's pretty deep. And I expect, maybe we'll get it in this next chapter, but how heartbreaking do you think? I'm assuming that female Marine wrote him a letter.
Yep.
You think that? I feel like that's just going to buckle Duiker's knees.
I think so too. And especially at the line at the end where he was just like, there's no one to hold me. Like, who is going to hold me?
It would have been her if it was somebody was going to.
Yeah.
I'd like to think,
She got fucking mauled down. I think it's interesting that Erickson didn't write about her to keep, I guess, that romance alive. To not have a headcanon of something so bloody and brutal for that romance. So that when hopefully we get to see him read the letter before the book is ended, and it keeps that memory of how they were alive rather than tainting that with a very descriptive way of how she dies.
Yeah.
The crows, though, do you think that because there were so many, that this is an indication that Coltane has either ascended or was a ascendant?
I don't know. I really wonder, like, I don't know what to think of that.
Because I think that there was a point in Duiker recalling Sormo, and 11 crows had to carry his soul. But the way that it is described is, basically from Duiker's perspective and the distance, is that it looked like flies on flesh, right? Well, there's definitely more than 11 there. You can only assume that the same more or less theory applies, right? That each crow is taking a piece of his soul. I guess it's never stated how many took his soul, but
I think you and I both imagine it must have been hundreds.
Right. Exactly. I think it's really interesting that you called this out in our conversation with Jan during the Whirlwind wrap up, or the Chain of Dogs wrap up, excuse me, where you pretty much, the artwork on the Subterranean Press model, similar instances, you called it.
Yeah. I wish I wasn't right on it.
Well, I think that's probably what made you think that he was going to die, right? Was seeing that artwork.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe we should write them and be like, you spoiled it.
I mean, it's a great cover. It looks awesome.
But I see what they did there, though. I fell for it. You didn't.
I was pretty firm in my belief on that. Yes.
Fair enough.
And I know you've been firm on your beliefs on things, and you've been right too. So it's
yeah. definitely feel like it's been more in number comparatively to Gardens of the Moon. There's been a lot of things that we've been way wrong on, and there's been lots of things that we've been pretty fucking dead on with. So
yeah. Another part that I liked when Nether screams, and like I just pictured that so vividly, just this hysterical scream coming out of this, young girl. It almost made me think of like it's not going to make sense, but it makes sense like how I hear it, but almost like in the Lord of the Rings when like the Nazgul like scream.
I don't remember. I didn't pay
like
attention to these movies.
That's what I hear, like just like that, like high pitched, just like
Blood curdle.
desperate yes, yeah, great word. And just she's clawing at her face and ripping her hair out and stuff. Like I can't say it was relatable, but it was just very, very striking. It just, I could picture it very clearly and vividly.
Yeah, this section didn't do great for. Well, I mean, it did do great. I meant that in like a fucked up way, as far as my imagination goes, and just the way that I depicted everything in my mind. Even with the part where the Apocalypse Army is throwing pieces of flesh of Coltane's army at him while he's on the cross, like, just how much more of a douchebag can you be?
Yeah,
like, my God.
Yeah. Have they not been through enough?
Right, just let the man die. And the fact that like Reloe and Dom just won't release his soul. They're just gonna let him die. They were just gonna let him die slow and painful.
Yeah. I think the last thing I had for this was it's now making sense to me after I kind of slowed down and read it, but there was like when I read it the first time, Duker has this thought about it being a day to hold in his arm broken figures. And in my head, like that sequence of words together did not make sense. But after reading it slowly, I know I made a point of that in our document here, and then you commented on that as well. Like, it makes sense to me now. And I think you're absolutely right about it being Squint, being the broken figure that he's holding in his arms. But yeah, whatever reason, like the sequence of events there, I struggled with that sentence.
Well, I mean, first there was Nether, right? Like holding her at bay. And then there was, Squint here. And he's forever going to be known as the man who killed Coltane. Not because he was being malicious, but because, I mean, he essentially set his soul free. So I'm sure that he's going to be looked at a hero in a very tragic situation.
Right. Yeah. But he did the merciful thing, though, versus letting him be tortured. So, like, yeah, I get not feeling good about it, but I mean, you can eat a shit sandwich or you can get punched in the mouth. Like, both options suck. Which one are you going to take?
I don't know which one I would take.
I think I'd rather get punched in the mouth.
Yeah, I would rather get punched in the mouth, too. Yeah, this that section gave me chills. Even when you were, like, reading it, like, I get goosebumps as you read certain parts, like with Bolt and List.
Yeah.
And Coltane and Nether, Nil. Yeah.
I try to bring it to life as best I can.
You do a great job at it. I always take more of a narration.
We both know that it's a lot of work to type all the stuff out, but I do genuinely like reading it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. It's nice to like put your own words on it. So then that way you don't feel like you're plagiarizing everything. Although I would say 70% of the phrases and terms are just written from the book, but just condensed, Yeah. Yeah.
True.
Well, shit, dude. I think this is probably going to be one of our shorter episodes that we've ever had. I think the shortest one was 54 minutes, and that was one in Gardens of the Moon. But definitely our shortest of this book.
Shortest one we've had in a while, for sure.
Yeah. And it's weird. Again, it's weird to only have one section each. So
we haven't had that, I don't think, have we?
Never. That has never happened. So Yeah.
I can't wait till we get to that 150-page chapter, and it's probably just one section.
I think we would have to maybe change our tactics if that's the case.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, even for a chapter of that length, I think we'd have to change our tactics anyways. But
Yeah, maybe, you take the first 10, I take the second 10, so on and so on.
that might be a couple episodes when we get there. So
Yeah, very well could be. I mean, I guess it just all depends on what's happening.
yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, shit, dude. Well, I have no words. I'm at a loss for words.
I think we did a pretty good job covering these two sections, and you know what? I don't think once we said we're going to read on and find out, but now we're going to read on and find out some stuff. So,
right. I guess, do you have any predictions as to like what's going to happen in these next 3 chapters and an epilogue?
I hope in this next chapter, Duiker reads the letter, note, whatever. That's kind of my biggest hope right now. I don't know how, otherwise, not many ideas right now.
I mean, I hope so. I hope so too. I definitely am very curious about what's going to happen with now that Coltane and everyone is dead. What the Apocalypse Army is going to do are they going to meet up with Shaik? Are they just going to continue to attack? And then Shaik comes in behind. Do they overtake Aaron? Also, Kalam, right? The last we left off of him, he was dumped in the water. So hopefully we touch base with him.
Maybe he's going to be what the cat drags into Smiley's Tavern.
Right. Also Fiddler and Icarium. I would imagine that at some point, I don't know if it's this next chapter or not, but hopefully we get reunited with them, and I think things kind of get set up for how things will be continued.
Yeah. I mean, I still feel like there's a lot to wrap up, and we don't have many pages to go here, but I mean, it's going to be a wild ride to the finish line.
Yeah. What do you feel still needs to be wrapped up?
Oh, I guess, I mean, I don't even know how Fellison's story is going to wrap up, but obviously there needs to be something to happen there. Mappo and Icarium and that whole crew, like, what's going to happen with the Deadhouse? Kalam, I don't think he's going to die, but how is he going to survive?
Right.
How's he going to recover? What's he going to, is there going to be some sort of resolution with Pearl?
Well, Pearl bounced the fuck out of there. I don't think we're going to get him in this book, the rest of it. I think he's gone for the rest of this book.
I think so.
Unless that's your spoiler.
No.
Oh, okay.
No. Nope, that still hasn't come up yet. It's hard for me to predict when that, which in these next 3 chapters it's going to happen, because I don't think it'll be in the epilogue.
Well, I mean, we got 3 weeks to find out, so hopefully we can record this episode sometime next week. I'm going to totally read tonight, and then probably get started on the summaries this weekend, maybe.
Yeah, I'll try to as well. I gotta work Saturday morning for an hour or two, and we'll see.
All right. Well, great episode, sir. As always, I look forward to doing this again.
For sure. And just make sure, check out our social media. I've been relatively quiet on Twitter here, been kind of busy, and TikTok, I don't know. Neither of us have done anything with that, but I was just looking, and we're up to 386 Twitter followers, which is pretty cool. And if anybody out there listening is inclined, check out our Patreon. We'd love to have you on board. I know, like you mentioned last time, not every episode, but probably most of them, you put up these videos that we record for it. If you want to see us recording and get access a little bit early, and probably a little bit more intimate way to communicate with us, since there's not as many people with that right now. So if you're able, we'd love to have you. If not, no worries. We're still going to have fun doing this, and appreciate you listening.
Very well said.
Well,
all right. Well, I'll see you around.
Sounds good, buddy. Happy reading.
Happy reading.
Later.
Bye.